Chapter 17. Sunday morning. Doreen woke up Sunday morning with a sense of satisfaction and well-being that she hadn't really had since she'd arrived. She looked around at her bedroom, clean, Spartan, and somewhat organized. She could use a bigger dresser and maybe a few other little things on the walls to help brighten up and personalize her bedroom, but for now, she was good with this, even with her mattress and box spring still on the floor. She was also thinking of getting rid of the old bed in the spare room. Cheerfully, she got up and had a quick shower, and then headed downstairs for her coffee. Thaddeus hopped onto her shoulder from his perch as she walked past him in her bedroom, startling her. She reached up and murmured, "Good morning, big guy." He rubbed against her head and said, "Good morning." "Good morning." She smiled in delight. "You're getting to be quite the talker, aren't you?" "Thaddeus Talker," he said, nodding his head. Thaddeus Talker. She wasn't sure if she was teaching him stuff or if he was remembering his earlier education, but either way, it was wonderful. Muggs raced down the stairs beside her. She found Goliath lying on the very bottom step, refusing to move. So hanging on to the railing, Doreen lightly hopped over him and said, "Nice try, Goliath. Tripping me up won't get your food any faster." She put on the coffee before feeding the animals. Then, as that was done, she unlocked the back door and propped it open so she could see outside to the beautiful summer-like morning. "It'll be a gorgeous day," she called out cheerfully. The animals raced eagerly at her side as she headed to the creek with her first cup of Java of the day. Even Thaddeus hopped from foot to foot beside her in excitement. "I really need to put a bench here," she murmured. She wanted it on her property, so she could sit here and not see anybody else while enjoying the view. The water made lovely little musical sounds as it drifted down toward the lake. It had risen somewhat, but it was still a long way from being anything more than a lovely babbling brook. Okay, so bigger than that, but at low water, the creek bed was wide, at least 30 feet across or maybe even twice that. She was really not good with distances. Still, the little bridge did quite well for that distance. She imagined that at various times the water probably rose up to the height of the little footbridge, which just reminded her of that rotten slat of wood. She'd have to add it to her list of things to do, maintain that little bridge for her own peace of mind. As she sat here, slowly waking up and enjoying the morning, she mentally worked on her to-do list. She should have brought a piece of paper and a pen with her. So instead, she pulled out her phone, opened a note, and started typing. She wanted to read those newspaper articles she had already scanned in last night, but she should probably ask Nan what they were all about first. She needed to rename the scans of the last of the Solomon files she had already done too, and that would be a couple hours of work. She wasn't looking forward to that job. It wasn't hard by any means, but it would be tedious. And she also wanted to find a temporary place to keep the paper research files that was a little better than where they currently resided. At least until Mac came by to move them permanently into the attic. It had kept her awake last night because it was still obvious what they were. If she shoved them into the back of the front closet though, she thought they might just stack all on top of each other in the very back corner. The front hall closet was seriously deep. That would work for now. More than that, she wanted to spend some time going over the box of notes and letters among the hope chest items she'd found in that cubbyhole above the closet. She knew that whoever wrote all those was long gone, but maybe some family members still cared. Or maybe they were long gone too. Nan didn't seem to know anything about it, and the house had been built in the 1940s. Doreen would have to check into whoever had built the house originally, and those who had lived here before Nan. Could be they knew something about the hope chest boxes. Obviously, the house hadn't been built with those boxes sitting there, so somebody had put them up in the attic. She kept adding notes to her list, then added grocery shopping items on her to-do list as well. She had left Millicent's so quickly yesterday that she hadn't really thought about doing the shopping afterward. She wanted to make a trip to Wendy's too, but was the consignment shop open today? She wasn't sure when Wendy opened the store on weekends, if at all. However, the things already packed in her car were to be donated. So Doreen should take the load to that thrift store first in Rutland, then return home and reload her car and go to Wendy's. She wondered if the thrift shop was open. Pondering that, she headed back to the kitchen to get another cup of coffee. It would be good to drop off all that stuff, empty her car, then go to a grocery store. Afterward, she could decide if she wanted to buy some furniture for the house, or if she wanted to live with it empty for a while. That really appealed to her. And she also hadn't even had a chance to enjoy her workshop garage. Plus, she hadn't moved her car inside the garage either. All those things she planned on doing today. With her second cup of coffee, she grabbed the bin of newspaper clippings and headed back to the creek. There, she sat on a big rock and slowly went through the articles. They spanned several decades. She frowned. Just then her phone rang. "Good morning, Nan," she said cheerfully. "Wow, don't you sound happy," Nan said. "I gather you slept well." "I did, indeed. And I got a lot more work done too." "Great," Nan said. "What about the house? Is it all done now?" "Not quite yet. I have those 6 boxes I have to find a place for because I don't know who they really belong to. Then I'll go through the one that's full of letters. Oh, and I found a stack full of newspaper clippings. I wanted to ask you about those." "Newspaper clippings?" Nan asked thoughtfully. "Why would they be there?" Doreen sighed. "I was hoping you'd tell me. There's a thick stack of them, Nan. Like 4 or maybe even 6 inches high. They're from like 25 years ago." "I don't remember that at all," Nan said. "And that's one of the things I wanted to mention. I think a walk up your way might be a perfect way to get my morning exercise." "Oh, that would be lovely," Doreen said. "Would you like to come for tea?" "I just want to get out of here," Nan said. "I've been feeling a bit stifled since I woke up. I'm on the creek with a cup of coffee and the newspaper clippings. The clippings are one of the few things I didn't get rid of yesterday. Do you want me to meet you halfway and then walk back with you?" "Oh no," Nan said. "I'm perfectly capable of walking that distance. Just stay where you are. I'm already outside Rosemore and at the creek. You should see me in a few minutes." Muggs caught sight of Nan first. He barked several times and then bolted toward her. Doreen hopped to her feet and headed down the path toward her grandmother. She gave her a good morning hug, and the 3 of them wandered back slowly. Thaddeus still sat on the rock at the water's edge, and Goliath was stretched out on the path beside the plastic bin of clippings. Nan stopped to give both critters a loving. Thaddeus took advantage and hopped up onto her shoulder. Nan sighed happily as she looked at the creek. "I should have taken out the rear fence years ago," she said. "This is really lovely. You do need a place to sit though." "I know," Doreen said. "I was just thinking I should put a bench here so I can sit down and enjoy the view." "Absolutely," Nan said. Then her gaze landed on the bin of clippings. She shook her head. "Is this what you were talking about?" Doreen handed it over to her. "Yes. Do you recognize any of these?" Nan sat down on a rock and sorted through a couple of the articles on top. "You know what? I vaguely remember something about this, but I don't think I was collecting the articles." "Meaning?" Doreen asked curiously. "I think it was somebody staying with me. She was looking into something. Now, if only I could remember what it was." "I looked through it briefly," Doreen said. "But it doesn't seem to have any rhyme or reason." "No, and that's quite true," Nan said with a frown as she flipped through more clippings. "It's a little confusing, isn't it?" "It is. I'm not sure there's even a thread of continuity through all this." Maybe she was just interested in murder stories? It's possible, Nan said. But I really don't know. It makes no sense at all. She shook her head, placed the bin down, but then frowned as she looked at it again. She picked it back up and went to the very bottom of the stack, where a clipping had a note tucked underneath. She pulled it out. Bob Small, serial killer at large, she read out loud. She lifted her gaze to Doreen. Oh my. Doreen was at her side. What on earth? Nan handed her the scrap of paper and showed her where it had been tucked in. I think you'll need to spend some time and go through this, Nan said. Look at that. Another mystery and probably another cold case. If he's a serial killer, Doreen said, frowning, it could be a lot of cold cases. Nan beamed up at her. I really love that you're here. You make things so much more exciting. Maybe, but all we could hope for now is that this guy is behind bars and already doing time for these cases. It's possible, Nan said, tapping the articles. They're all older. I know, Doreen said. I wonder who Bob Small is. You'll figure it out, Nan said. I'm sure you noted some of these articles are from Vancouver. You know what? I'm pretty sure lots of serial killers were down there. If you think about it, it's the biggest of all the cities in British Columbia. I'll have to look into it, Doreen said. Yes, but I'm not sure when you'll have time between Steve and the gun and those boxes from a hope chest, Nan said. Then she looked up at her. Any chance I can see them? Of course, Doreen said. Let's go inside, and I'll put on the tea kettle. Nan handed Doreen something she'd had in her pocket. And this is for us to have with our tea. Doreen chuckled. Chocolate chip muffins, both wrapped together into a single packet. Did you steal them from breakfast this morning? Can't be stealing if I already paid for it, Nan said cheerfully. Doreen shrugged. She wasn't sure about the legality of such a thing, but she was happy to have a chocolate chip muffin anyway. Although she didn't understand how things like muffins, which used to be healthy and full of things like bran and raisins and molasses, became chocolate chip versions, which to her were more cupcakes. But it was one more mystery in the world of the kitchen, as far as she was concerned. Calling the animals to them, they headed back into the house.